How was your life back then?
In those days, I don't think I believed in anything. So we were brought up, I would say, very open-minded, really. So my father, he believed in Islam, but he didn't believe in conventional Islam, the way we would understand it, the way I would understand it now. My mother, she actively hated religion. She was originally married to an Irishman, and that she got divorced, and they don't allow divorce in the Catholic faith. So she was excommunicated. She was thrown out of the Catholic faith. And then when she met my father, people didn't accept that. And she looked at religious people and she saw them as hypocrites. She saw them as always preaching, but not practicing. So we grew up in an atmosphere where there was no real faith in the household. So we were just taught to have good character, good conduct, good manners, but that your religion didn't matter. And if I think back now, there were probably times when I doubted if there was any God or if there was any belief or anything. And I certainly didn't believe that you needed to practice any faith.
What was the defining moment that led you to come closer to Islam?
I think for me, one of the defining moments was I was literally inside a party, music and people, and everybody was there in this big party. And my uncle, he had recently become religious, and it was Ramadan. I didn't even know it was Ramadan. And he came and he knocked on the door of the party, and he knew I was there, and he called me and he said, "I want you to come to the mosque tonight." I said, "I'm here with my friends." I said, "Uncle, please." And another day, no problem. He said, "No, tonight." And again, I said, "I can't leave." And he said, "I'm not arguing, I'm telling you." And I didn't know it was Laylatul Qadr. And he took me to the local mosque. And this was when I was in Motown Records. And at that time, I would say my life was going better than I could ever have hoped. And I remember the dua in the Qunut. And I wasn't joining in, I was sitting at the back of the mosque. And I felt the power. Ameen. I remember saying, I just sat there and I said, "Look, God, I don't know if you're there, but I tell you this, I'm not giving up my lifestyle." I said, my life is too good. I said, "If you want this for me, then you have to do something. You have to show me." From then, things started to just go down and down and down and down until I genuinely feared that I was losing my mind. I was unable to function properly. I was unable to work. My relationships became sour and all went wrong, and my career went wrong. Everything went wrong. And really, I went into a spiral which led to a sort of breakdown. I was so lost. And I remember one day, one of my cousins, he met, again, same thing, the son of my uncle who took me to the mosque. He took me to meet somebody, an imam. And I remember the imam kept saying to me the same thing. He was talking, he kept saying, "Traveling with no direction." And I felt that I was moving, but I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what was the point of life. I didn't know what was important. And I remember I was in this job and I fell asleep. I fell asleep in my chair. I just remember waking up. Brother, I felt like, I can't explain it. I felt like I was floating in the middle of the universe with nothing. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what was happening. I just felt this crisis.
What were the things that impressed you the most about Islam?
Two things in the beginning impressed me the most. Number one, when I saw people I knew people growing up from my family, from my distant family, who weren't practicing. None of them were practicing. We didn't grow up, our wider family, no one. But when I would see those who had made the transition, I always saw a contentment, a certain peace that they had that was lacking from everybody else. And that had a big impact on me, especially my cousin. When I would visit him, as I said, he was married with a child, he didn't have any money, and yet he was happier than me. And I'm working in the music business with loads of money and celebrities, and he's happier than me. Number one. Number two, when he would talk to me, when I would say, "Yeah, but what about this? This doesn't make sense. How is God going to do this? And why did God do that? And why is a prophet?" I would ask him because I didn't want to believe. His answers always said, Allah says in the Quran something. The Prophet Muhammad said, he wouldn't argue with me from his aql, from his reason, always, every single time. And it would always be the right answer. And I'd be astounded, how can he always have the right answer? And that, I used to think, that's amazing. He's not arguing from himself, just he's telling me Quran and Sunnah.
So what incident made you change your ways?
I remember this moment where everything changed. I can tell you the date, the 5th of October, 1993. I was in a bar with some friends and I felt like a panic attack coming on. First, I'd never experienced anything like this. I just wanted to run out of this. And then I thought, where am I going to run? And when I get there, I'm going to feel the same. It felt like the ground opened up and was going to swallow me up. That's what it felt like. And I drove home. I don't even know how I drove home. For the first time, I made dua. And I didn't know what I was saying. I didn't know what I was doing. But this is the funny thing about it. This shows you where I was in my life. I said, "Oh God," I said, "Please, God, please help me." And I made a deal. I said, "Look, if you save me now, if you save me from going crazy, I will give up everything haram for 2 weeks." This is what I said. Because it was inconceivable to me that I would give up for more than this. And then I said, no, that's not enough. That's not enough. I said, God, if you save me, I will give up all the haram for 1 month. Then I said, no, it's too long. Then I said, 3 weeks. Yes, okay, I settled, 3 weeks. I said, God, if you save me now, I will give up everything haram. Next 3 weeks, I won't touch anything haram. That was the first day where I decided to leave the haram. And of course, after 3 weeks, it was terrible. I wasn't better. So then I said, then I started saying, because in that time I'd started making dua and I'd even opened the Quran. I remember opening the Quran first time. And I remember, of course, one of the most important verses of my life to this day, فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْأُسْرِ يُسْرًا إِنَّ مَعَ الْأُسْرِ يُسْرًا. This difficulty that you're in, it will come to an end. It will come to an end. And I remember just holding on to that. Like with everything, I held on to that verse, that maybe some ease was going to come after this crisis.
What made you convinced that Islam is 100% true?
I'm going to be honest with you. I think if you grow up with many different ideological backgrounds, as we did, and even now, my brother, he is agnostic, maybe atheist. My sister is Buddhist, my father-in-law is Jewish. My mother-in-law was atheist, my closest people in my family are not religious, many of them. And same with many of my closest friends. But for me, the journey of faith is a constant journey. It's constantly tested, and shaitan will always whisper doubts. So I can be honest and say that my journey has not been linear. It's not just been straight, more iman. My iman has gone up and down and up and down. And there are periods of crisis that I have where I wonder, am I following the right version of Islam? Or is it really necessary to be this devout? Or maybe these small sins are not that bad. Or maybe, the thing every single time is the Quran. The Quran. How is this book possible? How is this, we can hold this miracle in our hands? How is it possible that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew he couldn't read, he couldn't write, he had no education? How is this possible that he predicted so many things over decades and centuries that would come true? How is it possible? So every time, for me, the thing that brings me back without any doubt is the Quran. And the more we learn about the Quran, the more we find out with science and with maths and with computers, and the more we analyze it, the more miraculous, the more miracles come out of the Quran. So whenever shaitan comes, this is the thing I say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem.